Hello, friends! I am here with Josh Bush, who made the creator of Hive Time. How you doing? Wait, I need to push this button first. Hello, friends! Hey, Josh, how you doing? Wait, can you hear me? Oh no, did I break everything? Today we're going to be playing some Hive Time, and we're going to be doing an interview with Josh.
Hi.
There we go. How you doing? Oh, that's quite alright.
I'm doing well.
So why don't you just tell a bit about yourself?
My name is Cheese. I have been making games in some form or another for about 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
For the past decade, I have been doing full-time game development. And for the past 10 months, I have been entirely financially dependent on games that I've made.
That's very exciting. And scary, but also exciting. It can be both.
Yes. Yes. There is a definite ambivalence there.
Very reasonable. We are going to be loading into where we left off on Hive Time before, but to be honest, this is going to be mostly just background for us chatting, and it's a really good game for background of chatting. Just, something to relax with. And
I can't count the number.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't count the number of times where I was developing or testing something and I would just zone out and watch my bees for a few hours instead of doing any work.
That's very reasonable and very wholesome. So you mentioned before that this disc was based off of something of your childhood. I remember that you had mentioned that when we were speaking beforehand.
Oh yeah, so I had an Amiga 500. It was my first computer, my family's first computer, and we had stickers for our floppy disks that looked a little bit like this. Although we didn't put the stickers on the back, but I found that if I didn't have the little spindle anchor, that it wasn't as recognizable. So took some liberties there.
Mm-hmm. Probably
also a tiny Homestar Runner reference there.
Cool hives. That definitely brings me back. It's been a hot minute since I've thought about Homestar Runner just in general. So, what did you think about my hive and these strange?
You have a very large number of production facilities. So the thing, the way that the production facilities work, or the way that everything in Hive Time works, is that nothing provides anything that's passive. Everything is dependent on the labor of the bees. So your wax assembler is not going to produce wax unless there are workers to work at them. And since each wax assembler can have 9 workers working concurrently, and bees need to take time to drop stuff up at storage, and then they need a break between shifts, so you can effectively have 3 times that amount of bees active. In theory, they don't always align or overlap like that, but up to 3 times 9, which is 27 bees, all working concurrently to max out the productivity of a single wax assembler.
So basically, I should have another 1,000 just nurseries then, is what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah. The biggest population I've heard of in the wild was, I think, 1,800. This is I wouldn't say it's small, but it's approaching medium-sized hive.
Right on. And how much value is are these quad rooms or triple rooms in other areas?
So they don't do anything in terms of increasing the number of bees that can work at once, because they take up the same amount of space that the underlying nurseries would have taken up. But they give a chance for twins to spawn whenever a bee spawns at one of these.
Okay, so it's not necessarily... Okay, that's interesting. And I had one of these things pop up, which I completely missed my first time around. Let's see what happens here. Representation. Mihai enjoys making games in their spare time. They love their fellow insects so much that they're always sure to put as many bugs in as Aw.
It's a new one. I wrote that like a week ago.
Yeah, when I saw a normal time in the day of the of the cell, I initially thought that was just a little wholesome, hey, everything's going well. But yeah, you had mentioned that those actually have little vignettes, and oh man, I love them now. Those are my new favorite part of the game.
They are possibly my favorite part as well. Um, Many management sims put effort into abstracting away the specificity and like individuality of
Hmm.
the people in the simulation that it represents, and I feel like that's dehumanizing. And I really wanted to do something that kind of highlighted that each of these little bees that we see, they don't live very long, but they have their own life and they have their own needs and they have their own perspectives and personalities and mods and stuff, and that's worth caring about and it's worthwhile.
Yeah,
So that's why we've got these little stories that pop up.
I like that. I like that a lot. Do you want to read this one?
Shh, this is my favorite part. The Kanga spends their time watching The Great Gatsby over and over again.
Aw.
There's like a whole bunch of film name puns in there, and also band name puns, and TV show name puns and stuff.
I am the worst at bands.
It's Smash Mouth. That's probably one of my favorites.
Really? I would not have made that read. I mean, my
In
favorite.
terms of puns, like Smash Mouth is like a play on Smash Mouth.
Oh, I see, I see, I see, I see. Ah, yes. The shift to repeat build commands makes a lot of sense, but I end up doing it manually just because there's a catharsis in clicking a whole bunch. For me, at least.
Yeah.
So like, oh, I can make this faster. I'm not gonna, but I could.
Originally, I didn't want to have the repeat shortcut. I was like, this is meant to be a slow game. You're meant to take it slow, and the clicking kind of helps regulate that.
Yeah.
But a lot of pre-release testers had very high demand for the ability to repeat stuff, and they were right. In some cases, it is a lot of fun to just plonk down 20 cells. And then you get to watch all of these bees go vroom across the hive and build them all at once.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's nice to have the option. I definitely wouldn't only do that, but yeah, I can definitely see it being nice to have the option.
So
Right.
Redefine Gamedev is asking whether or not this is
Yes.
written in GDScript or powered by a lower level programming language, and
Yes,
this
yes.
is entirely GDScript.
Entirely GDScript.
Yes.
And when did you pick up GDScript? Like, did you pick it up for this? How long have you been working in GDScript?
So I first started working on Godot, and I really should have looked this stuff up because I'm terrible at keeping track. The first time I tried to use Godot, I'd become aware of it. I backed Dogma and Don'tner and Pizza Boy adventure game on Kickstarter.
Okay.
Which was done by Occam Studio, who was employing Redas and Punto. At the time, they were using Godot as an internal engine. This was before it was released publicly as a free software project.
Okay.
And so I'd kind of become aware of it at that point, and so it was very much on my radar when the source release happened. And in 2015, I was participating in a game jam and was looking at doing maybe like a third-person platformer about a ladybug was what I was thinking, and I found the APIs were just not geared to do things in the way that I had expected or wanted them to be done. So I bounced off it at that point, and then in let me check some more dates. A year later. No. Less than a year. When the hell did I make this? Hang on, my time's back. Yeah, so later in 2015, I held a little jam just at home with my family and stuff, which is the thing that I do from time to time. And I made a little game called Super Happy Fun Sun, which is like this 2D top-down navigate an environment and manage momentum and gravity. You play as a little sun that brings light to planets.
Oh, that's adorable.
And it's okay. It's not amazing, but yeah, that was the first game that, because at that point I was like, well, this isn't someone else's jam where I'm trying to make something that represents myself. This is my internal home thing. Do whatever we feel like, whatever we're happy with, and yeah. So I published that in December 2015, I guess. Is that right? I feel like I made it sooner than that. Yam Party. I love this event.
Yam Party. A dung beetle folk trio have hollowed out a large yam to hold their inaugural annual shindig in. They're asking for a quantity of pollen to decorate it with. Absolutely. Oh, it doesn't actually tell me how much, though. That's interesting. Well, I mean, they can have as much as they need.
I'm pretty sure that one's a fixed amount, but many of them are just percentages. They won't show up if you can't afford it.
Oh, okay. Now that's interesting. What made you make that choice?
Have it not show up if you can't afford it, or not tell you?
Have it not show up if you can't afford it, because that's an interesting choice. Because some people would. Oh, there's some value in telling the player, "Hey, you are behind on X resource," and you decide to take the role of just saying, "Don't worry about it. We're only going to tell you if it's a positive." I'm just curious what that process was.
There are some events that do still trigger if you can't meet their requirements, but they will trigger a different variation. So, for example, did you see Old Bitey in your first stream? I can't recall.
Yes, the bear. Yes,
you did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And depending upon whether you have defenders or not, you will get a different kind of message. So if you don't have any defenders, the event will just say that the bear's on its way, and that's it. But if you do have defenders, it will tell you now's the time to deploy some defenders outside.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things that are overtly to be considered disasters, and then there are other things that are just, if it's not relevant to you, I don't necessarily want, particularly with something like Yam Party, which doesn't have any negative outcomes. I feel like it's probably better to make way for something where you do actually have a choice, if it's an event with a choice, or something that can actually impact your current situation.
So basically you don't want to burden the player with the knowledge that they have failed in that sense, right?
Yeah, I don't want to make people feel like they're missing out on stuff. Like there's so much stuff in the game that people aren't going to see already. I got to show them stuff.
Makes sense to me. Grab some more jelly storage. Just fill this all up with jelly storage because I do wanted to get the new queen when it's available. Alright, how's she doing? How do I check their status?
Press space to jump into inspect mode, and then you can click on her
to
see.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. So she hasn't done anything because she's been sitting on the throne her whole life. She's been around for an hour and 9 minutes. And all of the bees have this information, so some of them they'll tell you what they're carrying. If they're carrying resources, if they're not, then they'll be carrying like that. The defender's carrying responsibility.
I love it. Defending carrier responsibility. I love it.
The foragers that are about to go outside are carrying Wanderlust.
Aww. But we have another Hive Life. Let's see this one. You can voice this one over.
Stuck inside. Elizabeth always feels cooped up when patrolling inside the hive, and by the end of a shift is always itching to get deployed outside. So some of them are funny, some of them are sweet, some of them are sad.
I definitely like that. I definitely like that humanizing aspect of it, though. And you're right that a lot of games ignore that aspect of the management. Whenever I'm playing Civ, for example, after a session, like after I've played for however long my play session is, I'll daydream for a while about the history lessons that are being taught in that era to the children. That's my way of humanizing an otherwise dehumanized world. Is okay, now they're going to tell legend. Tell the bard is going to tell stories about the explorers from afar, or the school kids in the 1950s are getting these. Yes, that sort of information. That's always been I've always taken the idea to humanize it, but it's beautiful to see a game dev adding that into the core design of the game itself.
When you think about, say, Civ, for example, you have consequences for doing certain things. You'll end up with riots in certain situations, but that's so far abstracted from what is the impact on individual lives.
Right.
Has this person, has this person had to go without food? Has this person like been injured? Why do these people care? Why are they rioting? That's
Yeah.
abstracted away. All you care about is this:
It's a
true
stack
or
of
false?
stats.
Are they rioting or not? You know?
Yeah. The cities become stacks of stats, which
Yes.
well, which can.
I mean,
happen
it's
in the real
interesting
world,
from
too.
a gameplay perspective in terms of pushing this down into some numbers that you can then work with and manage. But I feel like if we're going to have people who are inspired by games and then go on to do things, it would be much more lovely to have the things that they're inspired by encouraging them to value people and to value
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. Come by and check it out sometime. On weekends, CT dabbles in cooking, but doesn't let it get in the way of the job.
Cooking is probably the most mundane of the possible substitutions that could have gone in there. There's things like dressing up as a moth. My mind goes blank whenever I go to read them out, but my favorite one is arson.
Dabbles in arson. That sounds fun.
It's interesting. Like it's silly along axes that align specifically with my tastes and may or may not make sense to other people.
Oh, I just noted. Wait, so your tastes are arson? Is that what you're saying?
I admit nothing.
Oh, pollen bloom. Huh, what does this mean for me?
So if we click on every cell except the exit, every cell exposes some kind of interface. So if we click on the map room here and go to the foraging screen,
Oh, golly.
there was a flower in one of these, and that was yielding extra resources when foragers visited that foraging zone. Yam Party, I think, might have given it to you, because Yam Party does give some blooms. If you're willing to dedicate 8 foragers' lives to exploring, you can send them out to explore one of those question mark zones,
Okay,
and that will reveal more.
nice.
Foraging is probably the most, well, foraging and defense are the 2 most underdeveloped management screens. It's difficult because I wanted to make all of the management things, each management system I wanted to make as optional as possible. So you can play the entire game and ignore this and not touch it, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I genuinely just missed it when I was playing before.
And I figure that these are things that you can then, that one's got a bloom. These are things that you can then focus on or specialize in for later playthroughs if you want to try different play strategies. And so if you want to try and get 600 jelly without ever researching a jelly refinery, that is possible.
Really?
But you need, yeah. Then you will probably need to make use of the foraging screen to offset that and make sure you've got higher resource influx than what you otherwise normally would have. And same goes for defense. I usually play without defenders at all because I find it more interesting to eat the consequences of the kind of disasters that defenders protect you from.
I did feel like the defenders were laid out similar. It reminded me of the old SimCity for the NES, or the Super Nintendo, rather. Did you ever play that?
I had SimCity on the Amiga, which was a little bit different from the NES version. The NES version, if I remember correctly, I've only seen it on stream, and that was fairly recently. It has banks that you can get loans from, and some civic buildings that you can like explicitly build. Whereas in the original version of SimCity, there's none of that. You just zone and build roads. But the original SimCity was a very, very big, or had a very strong influence over what kind of things I wanted to do and what kind of game I wanted this to be. All of the enjoyment the majority of the enjoyment that I got out of SimCity was in exploring and pushing the limits of the simulation by building different types of cities, by exploring how does it work if I don't build any commercial zones, or how does it work if I concentrate all of my polluting things in one corner of the map and keep all of my residential and commercial zones somewhere else, or how does it work if I never build an airport, or what can and what can't work, and that's something that I wanted Hive Time to express as well.
Okay, yeah, that exploration aspect where. Yeah,
you're exploring the boundaries of the sim, or the possibility space that it represents.
Trying to figure out on your own what's available. Nowadays, I feel like there's a heavy reliance on Wikipedias in terms of figuring out what the proper way to play a game is. And
Yeah.
I definitely have always felt that sort of misses out on.
If you hop into the
something
Bpedia
magic.
briefly,
Certainly.
I can.
Can I get to that from
It's
here?
the
Yes.
left button in the middle cluster.
Very good.
And the second last button is meant to look like a hexagonal life ring.
Oh yeah.
There is a topic called Now What down the bottom. And I put this in because I talked to a player who was like, I like this game, but it doesn't... Like, I feel like I've finished it. I feel I've gotten to the end and there's no more game. Are you, like, what's going on? I'm like, okay, well, like, in my mind, the idea is that hopefully you have whetted your appetite there, and that on your next playthrough you're going to try and do something else.
Yeah.
And they were like, but like what? For them, different people played things differently. Games are very subjective experiences.
Right.
And they weren't sort of able to kind of come up with any ideas on their own, and asked me for some suggestions. So I gave them more or less this list here. And then they asked if that could be put in the game. So that's why that's there. But there's a bunch of ideas or prompts for how you might play in a way that could be different from what your first Hive might have been.
Yeah, and I can see this being formatted as a actual challenge scenario in a different style of game rather than just a page of ideas. But I think the page of ideas actually works better for keeping it free form than making it a specific restricted challenge.
I don't want to tell people how they have to play. I want to give them the feeling that they're exploring the possibility space, not doing a checklist, you know?
Yeah. It's easy for that to happen, for that to feel like you're checking off a list. Okay, so if I have one complaint about this game, it's that my brain sees exit, and I think this is to exit the menu. This happened so many times. That's it. That's my complaint. That it's all good after that.
I have seen that, and I don't.
Ooh.
This took forever to paint all the little dimples on the Hexo bricks here.
Aw, they do look pretty cool, and in fact they do. Hexo released a new line in their range of programmable building block toys, inspiring a portion of the Hive's population to become bee-sitters in order to play with them. Thankfully, they're also committed to raising grubs. Oh my gosh.
So all of the role change events like this are, except for the worker one, the worker one's not so bad, but all of the others are people embracing the vocation or the role for the wrong reason. And that was really important to me. Because it's funny, right? And this game is very much humor is a big part of it. But B, it's really interesting when people drive themselves into situations that they're not necessarily a good fit for, because you can imagine, like, it prompts you to imagine more rather than just go, oh, a bunch of bees who wanted to become bee sitters finally had their dream fulfilled. That's a really different and much more short-lived thought than a whole bunch of bees became bee sitters so that they could play with toys. How is this going to unfold, you know?
And in my other stream, I had basically an extinction event because I already was really low on bee sitters, and then something swapped everything away from that. And I'm like, oh no, I have no bees left.
And all of those kinds of disasters, everything is very easy to recover from, but they feel very intense and they feel very dramatic.
Also, Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something that I was very consciously trying to create, was this sense of things are important and you should probably respond. But if you don't, then the opportunity to rebuild and learn is very accessible. Yeah.
This also strikes straight to my heart, though, because some of the first programming I ever did was Lego Logo.
And I never got to have a Mindstorms set when I was young, but I thought they looked amazing and was so excited about them. So this was my attempt to draw something that evoked Mindstorms. I
went to a summer camp where they that was basically the project throughout the entire thing, was to create a Lego Mindstorms custom thing using Logo programming language. You remember the Logo programming language, right? With the turtle?
Yeah, I didn't use it, but I've come across it.
Yeah. So that strikes to the deepest part of my heart right there. I love it.
And that's really cool to hear. And also, did you mention that? I can't remember if it was you. Maybe it was someone else. Recently mentioned that they feel uncomfortable with bees. I do think it was someone else. But I was talking to someone the other day. There we go. That's how we do this anecdote.
Very good.
I was talking to someone who was streaming the other day, and they said that they normally feel very uncomfortable around bees, and were worried that they were gonna struggle to enjoy this game. And after having played it for a while, now that I remember, they first played it a year ago or so, they say that they now are much more comfortable around bees
fantastic.
in the real world. And I'd never considered that this could be any kind of therapy game, and I'm definitely not qualified to say that it should be, but it is intensely heartening to hear that
showing them in a positive
it's
light.
had a positive impact on people's lives. And like, if you have a phobia or you have a fear, then that's kind of traumatic to be experiencing, and so to not experience that is like a positive impact.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a fear of wasps, but wasps and bees are definitely two different creatures.
Yeah, wasps are really tricky. I don't think I have a nest here, but I definitely have a lot of wasps that hang around a tree just outside my bedroom window. And I've come to learn, both through my personal experiences and through reading, that in general, wasps have a bit of a reputation for being
Jerks.
unfriendly. But what it turns out, or it turns out that wasp behaviors and wasp body language is very easy for humans to read as aggressive. They're just moving around trying to get different angles on things so that they can understand and see what's going on. But for us, that's a very aggressive in-your-face thing. And then our reactions, a typical human reaction to that, is something that a wasp will perceive as aggressive. And this kind of cycle of escalation that happens, that's really not necessarily the wasp being aggressive to begin with. And so, if you just... Sudden movements are the things that it do upset wasps, and so when you shoo something away, or you raise your arms or hands quickly to defend yourself, as instinctually we often do, that's the kind of thing that does make them upset. So if you're still and you're calm, it can be interesting to watch them. I enjoy their company.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advocate directly interacting with them, because
because they are still jerks.
They can be very aggressive when they want to be.
Windy season. It is blowing a gale out there. Foragers and workers will collect less pollen, but have more time for finding nectar. Great, because that's what I need.
So we can see here a slight shortcoming in Godot's rich text. Is it rich text label? I think it is. Class, which allows you to stick images and font styling into text, which is wonderful. But it has no concept of a non-breaking space, and will wrap between an image and a word that has no space between it. So I have a patch that I'm working on that fixes a couple of typos that made it into some of the new vignettes that I wrote, and part of that patch will also be tweaking the wording of this so that we don't see a wrap between the worker icon and the word workers.
Yeah, there's a few little hiccups in Godot that are like that. Like they're mostly they're all overcomable, but like you're saying, it's like that having a non-line breaking space sure would be a nice thing to have.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that you would go, well, this sucks, I can't make my game. But
literally
it is a
unplayable.
small friction point. But I think it's also worth acknowledging that every engine has its
absolutely.
own nuances and its own rough edges. And yeah, I don't think Godot is particularly noteworthy in that regard.
One of my
the Queen Yawn animation, I love that.
Adorable. One of my friends recently bumped into something like that in Godot, where they were making a pinball game, and Godot doesn't let you map the left shift separately from the right shift.
Oh, yes.
And they had a fun time trying to figure out how to work around where...
So I think you can access the key code directly, which is different from the scan code. And you can possibly use that to differentiate. But I haven't tried.
I'll let him know.
But yeah, there are a few things where you kind of go, oh, this isn't good. Like, I discovered, well, originally I wanted to have every single bee have its own buzz sound, so that no matter where you zoomed in, you would always hear the correct number of bee sounds moving around the screen as bees fly past and stuff. But I found out that Godot's sound server kind of loses its marbles under certain conditions if you have too many sound effects, and it cannot recover until you close and restart the game.
Oh wow!
So there is an upper limit of, I think the default is 25. So only 25 of these bees are making sounds.
That is interesting.
But I have a sort of general, like when you zoom right in, it's a little bit quieter. When you zoom out a tiny bit, it's a bit louder. This kind of general hive buzzing sound, which kind of masks that some are not making any sound.
Okay. You want to read this one?
Live a little. Olivia is always sure to fly as safely as possible. When leaving the hive, Olivia carefully looks around, and if nobody is watching, does a little twirl.
Aww. This game is so wholesome. Absolute delight. Now, you had mentioned that this actually was initially part of a game jam.
Yeah, so this was one of the little kind of making a game at home with my family kind of thing. And it was just me and my then Miriam, who I gave kind of an art director role. She painted... Well, after the jam ended, she went back to her work, and I continued development on the game full time. But yeah, in 10 days, we made this game. In my mind, it's the same game. There is no 3D model for the jelly refinery, at that point, at the 10th day, there was no model for the jelly refinery, so you wouldn't know if you'd built one, and it was a little bit awkward. But you know, all the roles were in. There was no research because at that point, I don't think. At least maybe there was research. I don't think there was research. No, there wasn't. There was some dependency though. Like you had to build a workshop before you could build some other things. Yeah, it was like the game is over if you don't make 600 jelly. There wasn't a way to spawn a queen though, so the game was over either way, I guess. But more or less, it was this game. All of the graphics that were in there, aside from the HUD and the wax assembler, I ended up changing. The original wax assembler had more of a kind of curvy conveyor belts, Dr. Seuss style look and feel to it. So that was in there. But other than that, pretty much everything that was in the jam version is here.
Okay.
But yeah, 10 days to make a little management sim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's a bee wearing a witch's hat, or a traffic cone, as you would call it.
Oh.
Up in the top right corner of the screen.
Ah, yes. Who is that?
It's Jenny. You can click on Jenny. So these are special bees. They live for about... So your average bee lives for about 90 seconds. Okay. So the population churn's quite high, and that's important for the management systems to be able to take effect within a period of time that you will notice them. Mm-hmm. But these special bees are much longer lived, and they have a special hat, and they have a little trail. This one's got bubbles coming off it, but they're hard to see against the jelly. The idea is that in a smaller hive, obviously, they're easier to spot earlier on in the game. But the idea is that these are bees that you could see moving around. You go, oh, they got a fancy hat. What's up with that? And they're a bee that you get to know. You see their name. You can customize them, so you can have a little bit more sense of personal ownership over them. And I really wanted to make sure that, even though all of the other bees are, well, all of the bees really are transient. This is a generational community, and by nature, they're not going to last for long, but I wanted to make sure that there were some bees that you could have a chance to get attached to.
And I think that works well with the nature of the game, with something that you... let's pick someone at random. Let's pick Deb here and follow them for a while.
You see what they're doing. And down the bottom, it'll tell you what their current activity is as well. So they're patrolling and then checking in. And Defenders don't take breaks between shifts, which is, and they'll rush if there's a barracks that's about to expire. They'll rush to it so they can move faster than other bees normally do.
That's good.
Just to give you a leg up on keeping everything defended. So if a defender doesn't visit a barracks within a certain period of time, that's what this blue expanding thing is. If it gets to the edge, it'll become red, and the area covered by that barracks won't be considered patrolled anymore or defended anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what you can see if you click on a barracks and see the defense screen. That's kind of what it shows you.
No Gook. Makena is embarrassed about spelling it Gelly, but knows the pronouncing. Okay. Okay. So
That's
how do you?
Good one.
How? I'm gonna make you. No, you're reading this one. Yeah, I'm gonna make you read this one.
I'll do it. No Gurk. Makena is embarrassed about spelling it jelly, but knows they're pronouncing GIF right no matter how anybody else says it. But I love this because, whoever's playing is going to read it in their own mind, and they're going to be confronted in their own way by this.
Hey.
Not that it's intensely confrontational, but it's a thing that evokes a particular type of response.
Yeah,
and it seems to evoke it no matter how anybody pronounces GIF or GIF. It's fun. There's also one about typos, which is kind of funny if it comes up.
I will definitely keep eye out for it.
So if you're looking for a specific bee, you can click on the throne room and there's a bee list, which is different from the A list, of course.
Of course.
And you can go to special bees, and that will show you the bees that you can customize, the ones with special hats. You can click the follow button there, and it'll zip over, and that's Jenny that we were following before. But you can also see all of your other bees as well. The hundreds of hundreds of many bees, who they are, what they're up to.
Delightful. Oh, we have another vignette. The perfect abs. Celeste makes sure to tickle every grub before sleep to promote additional abdominal muscle growth. Sure. Okay. I mean,
So
I'm not sure
my
you
partner.
have... Go ahead.
I was going to say this is one of the pieces of art that was done during the jam. Miriam did this. She designed the look and feel of the bees in the events and vignettes. And she also did a couple of she did the non-upgraded roll cells, were her first 3D models that she'd ever done.
Oh, okay. Speaking
Speaking of which, if you zoom in on the nurseries in the background, you can see drawings that the baby bees have done. It took me a while to learn how to draw like a baby bee. But it was very rewarding. I really like that blue one.
That looks very nice.
Oh, not that blue one, the other blue one.
That one's. I love it too.
It's very cool. The one with the all of these are way too small to see. One day I might do an art book where I can show these in full size. But there's one of a bee standing under a rainbow, and it's very, very nice.
Ooh, time for a new queen. Yes, we have
Nice.
600. Well done. We are ready to fly without training wheels and build whatever style, shape, or size hive we want. Move to a new hive which you eat with each queen. Oh. Okay.
So the image here was a more subtle attempt at prompting players to try different things. Like I wanted to, there's one that's like a hexagonal rings coming out, and there's one that's like this kind of web of stuff, and one that's a heart shape, and I just wanted to show some different shaped and different styled hives, hopefully to prompt people towards considering, oh, what could I make, Yeah. But it's pretty subtle.
It's subtle. Sometimes subtle can be more effective because you're not pushing. You're pushing the players into thinking about it without pushing the player into saying you should act on it, which is a different mentality, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to that thing I was saying before. I don't really want to give people a checklist.
Yeah.
I want to give people room to feel like they can explore on their own.
Okay, a new queen has been born. We may run this hive with her. Let's find a new hive. Sure.
there'll be an icon in the bottom left when we get to the new hive. You can click on that if you like.
Oh. What a
And it
delightful
shows
hive.
you never get to zoom out this far in. So for I don't know if that's probably not visible on stream.
Nope.
But that showed a screenshot of the old hive, the entire play space, further out than you can ever zoom with your camera. And I wanted to give you something like something special. That's kind of a like a memoir, or if you need to find it again, it'll be in your. You can go into the settings menu in the game, and there's a like open user folder button down the bottom in the settings menu.
Oh, in settings. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. And then there's a screenshots folder in there.
Okay.
There was a save that automatically happened. It's like titled whatever your save name was _last save, and that is you can if you want to go back to the old hive, then you can just load that save and continue on.
Okay. Let me.
So this image is big. It's if you go 1:1, you'll see that. I don't know Windows. I don't know if there's a 1:1 button.
I'm just trying to set up so the stream can actually see it. They should be able to see it for a moment. But I'm going to head back into the collab button. There we are.
It's all good. So you'll see on the back of the throne room there. You need to zoom out a little. There it is.
Oh, okay.
If you go into inspect mode, you can click on that. Hello, Queen.
Aw. Gone, but not forgotten.
So
what are the effects? I'm curious about that.
So there's a thing that you can research, which if you build a workshop, we can take a look at it.
Okay.
But I'll talk about these portraits for a second. This was something that I wanted to, because remembering past bees is part of that humanizing aspect that I wanted to carry. I felt like it's really important to make sure that you're not just in the now and planning for the future, but also recognizing and remembering the past. And having portraits of your past queens was something that I really wanted to have in the game, but as the game's release date closed in, it was one of the features that I kind of felt I had to let go of. There were too many other things that were a little bit more important for the game that needed to go in, and I was really sad about it. And then a friend of mine who is also a developer, Aubrey Sir, who has a studio called 12 East Games. They made a game called Trackless, which is very cool if anybody would like to check it out. He gave me a nudge and he said, oh, look, if there's anything you need a hand with, let me know. And he's also an artist. He painted many of the... You know how Humble Bundle used to have like special icons for each game early on?
Yeah.
He painted...
That was a hot
I think he
minute
painted
ago.
all of those. And he's also a portrait artist as well. And I mentioned this thing to him, and he was like, yeah, man, I could do that. So he painted, like, with no notice. I think it was like 2 days before the game released. He painted one portrait which got into the game, and I spent the morning of release implementing that. And then for the first large update after release, we added like 7 or 8 portraits, and this is one of the newer ones. And I'm so happy with them. They're wonderful and they're fanciful, and in my mind, so you've got the management sim, which is kind of how we see the bees and their world from a management perspective, and we have the vignettes, which is like looking at the individual bees and their lives and their character. Like that's how we see that stuff. But these portraits are how the bees see themselves. Like this is that queen imagines herself to be this kind of fanciful creature, and
So
I really like
glamour shot.
Yeah. I really love having these kind of multiple perspectives on bees, and kind of go, well, your perspective on them is different from their own perspective on them.
Yeah. And their perspectives are valid. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Toss down a couple of exits to open up with.
Yep. So you keep your you keep all of your research.
Oh, that's actually... I mean, it makes sense. I didn't really just process it.
So in my mind, like, this is the start of the game. Everything up till now is a tutorial. Originally, there was no research. There was no ability to... you might want to get a wax assembler up and happening.
That would indeed make sense. They're doing their best. It is a bit sharp to go from 300-ish bees down to 4.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
Completely, reasonable for starting out this sort of reset, but
Well, I give you the option to stay in the hive and do whatever you want, whether you want to just like maintain a sustainable hive, you want to downsize and rejig things to be more efficient, or you want to play and build out the entire play space, or whatever you want to do. Like, there's a lot of valid stuff that you can do at that level, but there are a lot of people who also like just this early phase. And I remember when I played SimCity, I was like, if I ever wanted to make something new or start something from scratch, I had to leave my old game. Like, I had to like basically quit it and feel like I abandoned it. And there was no continuity between those two hives.
yeah. You want to take this one?
Real enough, Kamara likes to use their spare time to research fake bee upgrades in celebration of friends' achievements, and gives each one a little research plaque for their skills.
You know, I do want to hear the rest of your comment, but I do want to touch on one thing real quick. I noticed that you used they them for most of the vignettes.
Yes.
I'm curious,
Yes.
since bees
Everything
very
except the
much
queen.
since bees are very much gendered in workers. I'm curious about your thought process there. I mean, I appreciate it. I go by they them myself, so.
So as soon as I made a decision pretty early on that I wasn't going to make. Hang on. It's like take a couple more steps backwards. So there are no drones in Hive Time, right? There is no depictions of reproduction, which means that there is no room for male bees. But I felt like I wanted to have male bees in the name list, so you could have a Jeff bee floating around. And the moment that we do that, I was like, well, it doesn't make sense to really explicitly gender things. That creates more work for me programmatically to inject pronouns and things. And also, if I ever want to localize this to other languages, the more simpler to keep that kind of stuff. I don't have the resources to localize this. It would be a lot of work to do. It's not set up for it. But if the game did amazingly well and that became an option, then the simpler things are, the better. And so gender neutral pronouns was the best way to keep things simple. The queen, on the other hand, is always she, her.
Which that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, you can when you start a new game, one of the find your own fun options is a custom queen name. So you could have a Queen Jeff if you want.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff that does kind of lean on this kind of female matriarch cultural concept, and yeah, it's like, do I want to lean into that or do I want to move away from it? And I felt like I wanted to lean into it.
Okay. Right on. I know I completely interrupted your other story.
No, that's okay. I don't mind the odd sidetrack. So I was saying that when I played SimCity, it kind of bummed me out to feel like I had all of these abandoned cities that had no connection or relationship to each other. Whereas with Hive Time, I saw an opportunity to say, okay, well, if you enjoy the start of the game, you could just make a big long string of hives, and the lineage of queens that you have. If you when we're done with this vignette, if you go into inspect mode and look at your queen, you will notice that she is part of the same lineage as the queen that you previously had.
Oh. Slowly, Mark secretly likes to see how slowly they can leave the hive without other bees bustling past. That is, throne room info, would that be? Or no, it would be in inspect mode.
Space, yeah.
Activity?
There's Queen Jen II. Whereas the first queen was Queen Jen I, and every queen will be called Jen.
Excellent.
So there's some like small things of continuity, and we have the past queen's portrait hanging in the background. Like all of these these things that I wanted to allow anybody who specifically enjoys this early part of the game. I don't want you to feel like you're giving up. You know, I want you to feel like it's valid to move on. I like how your hive almost looks like a little fish.
Yee. You know what? I'm leaning into that. This is going to be a fish hive now.
Yes.
It was
But yeah, so yeah, that's why the option to start a new hive is there. And then when you do have queen effects, which we'll look at the research in a second, when you do have queen effects, sometimes that can become a strategic decision of, do I want to go to another hive or not?
And there are definitely some games where the gameplay differs. Oh, a helpful hand. A guild of carpenter bees is touring hives in area of hope, raising its profile by offering resources on wax best practices. Okay. Sure. Seems reasonable. Now, is this something that can have a good or bad outcome, or is this...
This one only has good outcomes, so you can choose to not engage with it, or you can choose to engage with it, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to feel like it could potentially have a bad outcome.
Ah, I see.
And there's a door-to-door sales grasshopper one that is explicitly framed as negative in the text, but has no negative outcome. Do you say lichen or lichen?
I say lichen, where I'm from.
Okay, good, because this is geared towards lichen.
I'm liking this. In the evenings, Anita attends a small lichen garden. They're very proud of it, but are too shy to show it to anybody. Ah, these vignettes are just the best now. That's my favorite part of the game now.
Yeah, when I saw your previous stream and saw that you weren't getting those, and you were commenting on other aspects of the game being adorable, I was like, oh no, you're missing out on the most adorable part.
True. But no, I wanted to. I need to adjust my thingy thing. There is definitely some
keep
games.
in mind you don't have upgraded nurseries, so you won't be getting that twin boost increase in the population.
There are definitely some games that play so differently between early game and late game that you want to enjoy early game in a different, as if you want to enjoy the early game in a way that you otherwise might not be able to. Right off the top of my head, like the exploration phase of Civ, like we were discussing before with Civilization, is so far removed from every other era. Or Spore, where the initial single cellular phase of the game is just completely different from everything else in the game, and I definitely know people who will just both of those games will play the first part of the game, get to either the next era or the next phase in Spore, and be like, well, I'm done now, and just close the game and start a new one. And I think that this match is a good way of pacing that idea of saying, like, you know what, if you like the early game, feel free. All you need is 600 nectar and go to it. Or if you want to do a wider, massive scale, then you have that option available to you. And I think that's a nice balance that you've struck.
Cheers. That's it's nice to hear other people appreciating that as well, because that is the thing that people do. People are like, I like the starting bit. That's the bit I want to play. And that's valid.
You want to read this one?
Yes. Almost pleasant. Faria knows that grubs are meant to smell bad, but they kind of like it. This is like a loosely inspired by a sketch from a show called The McAuliffe Program. I'm pretty sure it was The McAuliffe Program. There have been a couple of sketch shows that guy did. But anyway, there's this guy who, I think he works in an old people's home, and he's being interviewed, and he keeps talking about how it smells like wee, but he puts an aside in to say, which I actually don't mind, every time he mentions it, and it's kind of funny. It's this idea of a thing that people normally associate as being bad, to have a person sort of constantly saying that they don't mind it, but saying it in a way that's entirely gratuitous. And I always enjoyed that sketch, and so that was a kind of small, obscure reference to it there.
Very good. So what was the process between finishing the game's development, finishing the game jam, and releasing the game on its own?
So it took me 7 months of more or less full-time. We worked at much less than full-time during the jam. One of the things that I think makes jams interesting is to treat them as a project management challenge. Like the time constraint is a thing that you will benefit from solving. Like it's more interesting to solve that problem than to try and brute force it by overworking, right?
Yeah.
If you try and just give yourself free time by staying up all night, that's not solving the problem. That's avoiding the problem, and that's much less interesting. So we did 6-hour days across the 10-day game jam that we did the initial prototype for. But yeah, I focused a lot on. I completely redesigned the UI. The HUD was always temporary. Menu stuff just didn't exist. Research went in. The tutorials went in. A lot of stuff to ease play, because there's so much to pick up with these kinds of games in general. I wanted to. That's why the research is in there at all, is to kind of gate the amount of stuff that you have access to at the beginning of the game to a manageable level. Like there's only 2 things that you can build from each of the categories when you first start the game.
And then when you make your second hive, you've already gone through that tutorial, so you don't need the gating, so you keep the research.
Right. There's still a couple of things, like there's some stuff that you can't build until you upgrade your workshop. But in general, like there's no need for me to do any kind of handholdy stuff. You already know how the game works and what the game is about.
And it feels natural to transition the research into the new hive in a way that other gating effects might not feel as organic.
Yeah. But yeah, so we had 1 hat per role. We mentioned hats. We had 1 hat per role, and they were used to make it so, because like originally there was no HUD. We ended up putting one in the jam version just to keep things readable. But my hope was, in my mind, the hive is your interface, right? I wanted to make it so that you could, as much as possible, observe everything that you need to know by observing the hive. And so giving each different role a different hat. Our builder bees here have yellow construction hats. Any bee that's got a yellow construction hat is a builder. You can see them move through the hive. Up to about 50 bees, you can generally kind of intuit the ratios of the current population by just looking. Once you get above that, you can't. But
yeah,
it doesn't scale well, sadly, which is why the HUD stayed, to be honest. When you look at the research cells, their levels go up and down visually, so you can gauge that and that sort of stuff. But one thing I wanted to do, we mentioned special bees. I wanted to add more hats to allow you to customize that. So at this time, every role has, in the jam version it was just one hat per bee, and now it is 7 hats per bee. Per role, sorry.
Okay.
Not including the no hat option. And then queens have, like, you can't normally change the queen hat. There's a special event that can trigger after your first queen that will allow you to change the hat to something else if you want. But there are, like, I don't know, there might be 10 queen hats now. But yeah, so like adding more stuff like that, just more vignettes, more events, more options. Yeah, I think we only had the 4 seasonal events in the game originally, in the jam version. I had written out more events, but we didn't really have art for them. No, we did have bear attack in the jam version, I think, maybe. So yeah, I'd written a whole bunch, and we got a few of them in, but not heaps. So yeah, it was balanced between UX and content, really.
Yeah. Safety first. Mary is the occupational hive safety representative at this wax assembler. Safety audits might not be a lot of fun, but Mary thinks they're better than hot wax accidents, now aren't they?
Mary knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, I definitely think that game jams come with the danger of glorifying crunch, glorifying the worst parts of the gaming industry. Like, that's just a danger that game jams can normalize, I guess would be the best way of phrasing it. So
and like,
I definitely agree with your stance that it's, you know, project management and pacing your metering yourself is the most important thing that a team can do.
yeah, I think it's like it's a cultural thing, right? Like we generally the cultures that we have surrounding game jams are about celebrating people who do crunch, but I think I don't think it's anything intrinsically a part of short time constraint events like that. Like I think we could easily build a different kind of culture.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is on us, the people who are organizing the game jams, to make sure that there's a reasonable amount of time. I've seen the train jams. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, I've heard of Train Jam.
Where, yeah, you have 72 hours or something absurdly tight, and it's like that's not great for for actually being able to create an effective experience, but it's also extremely difficult for that to be a representation of the gaming industry, because a lot of people who do game jams are doing so to get their name out there, are doing so basically to build a resume, and
it does build a concerning foundation.
Yeah, and it's something that I just think that we all need to be conscious of.
I think that like really short jams are inherently problematic, but I think the level of work that we expect to be done with them is the where the space lies there. So like I've done 36-hour jams, I've done 24-hour jams. I have made a game in 7 hours, and that's doable, right? I've sometimes done talks where I have the day before spent some time prototyping a game, and then during the talk made the game as part of the talk. So like, you know, end up making the game in an hour or something.
It does sound fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise. I particularly, I think there's a lot to be learned from making the same game twice, and that's a lot easier when it's a small game, right?
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, there's a lot you can learn about how you approach things once you have awareness, and I think that can lead you towards a place where, from a project management perspective, you can be better equipped to understand what is worth and what isn't worth embracing, so far as mid to late insights go. Because when you start a project, you don't know your project. You come to know your project while you're working on it.
The project will tell you what it is.
Right. To an extent, you are at the mercy of whatever it is that resolves from the possibility space that you're exploring. And by nature, that means that as you get towards the end of development, you can make the most informed decisions. But at that point, you've already sunk a whole lot of effort in, so you've got to weigh up from a project management perspective what is worth embracing and what is not worth embracing. And I think that making the same game a couple of times gives you a better way of navigating that, or gives you more insight into how to navigate that.
Also, the late development pivots that that can be hard to see ahead of time. The newer you are, right?
Yeah. I feel I think Hive Time is the game that I had the clearest vision for from the start, and which changed the least between start and finish. It's very difficult for me to, you asked what had changed during the game jam, between the game jam and the final result, and it's very difficult for me to see, because when I play the jam version, which is available on my itch page for anybody who would like to check it out, when I play that, I see this, because it was all in my mind when I was making that. Like, I can see all of the things that are there, even though, for the most part, there's just that stuff isn't there.
The feeling of capturing lightning in a bottle comes to mind. Someone, the Cosmic says, yeah.
Cosmic Misfit Drew is a friend of mine who also helped test the game before release, and I'm very thankful for his efforts.
Very good. Popularity haunts design on social media, but they're okay with it.
So popularity is like one of a bunch of things that can be substituted as well. I might read out the list because it's kind of fun. So when I wrote that one, I think it was like an old friend haunts them on social media.
Really?
And I thought I think that's what I originally wrote, was like an old friend
Huh.
haunts them on social media, but they're okay with it. And I was like, that's an interesting thing. That's like a relationship dynamic that a lot of people experience, and different people handle it differently, and that's fair and fine. I don't really explain any of the specifics. That's up to you to imagine. But after I'd written it, I was like, it would be funnier to have other things in there. So popularity is one, insecurity is another, social status. Actually, maybe social status was the first one. It's like social status haunts them on social media. And then there's an old friend and a new friend and 3 stink bugs in a trench coat.
Excellent.
You probably didn't see them because you weren't following the vignettes, but there are a number of 3 stink bugs in a trench coat jokes that are present in this. Miriam...
we already got a repeat.
Yeah, so when you go to a new hive, the list gets shuffled.
Okay.
Miriam was very adamant that 3 stinks bugs in a trench coat was not a good joke and shouldn't be in there, but she is objectively wrong. And there are many 3 stink bugs in a trench coat gags in this.
Excellent. So, how do I get the upgrades?
Upgrade your workshop.
Oh, upgrade the workshop itself. Okay. What is that? What is the layout for that again?
It's just a single cell.
Oh, okay.
You don't have enough wax, I don't think.
Indeed.
You may want to bump up the B-sitters there. I think we're sort of struggling to maintain positive growth. Just to keep things ticking along. So there is there is a degree of random fluctuation that can occur in bee lifespan. So the average lifespan is 90 seconds, but the actual lifespan is, give or take, I think it's 10 seconds.
So I'm just curious why it says BEA Tris instead of BEE Tris. That's my question.
So humor is an interesting thing, right? It's something that a lot of people intrinsically are able to appreciate, but it becomes very difficult to intentionally construct.
Oh, yeah.
The nuances of it are very inscrutable in general and difficult to wrangle in particular. Initially, all of the bee names were puns, and I immediately discovered that
It got old quick.
when the pun density is that high, it is impossible to pick out the useful information. It's impossible. Is this a bee name? Is this the name? Or is this a joke? Is this part of the joke? Is this not part of the joke? Which bit is the name? It becomes much harder to track.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
But it's funny because it's everybody's first instinct is, oh, you should have made it Beatrice with a B. And it's always interesting to come up against these things of, yes, that is the first instinct, but once we sit down and explore that a little bit, we discover that it's not actually a good idea.
That makes sense now that you mention it, yeah.
And it's difficult to communicate. Like, obviously, I don't need to communicate that for this, for example. But for, say, other projects like my first-person text adventure hybrid engine, the first instinct that people often have is, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but because you don't see anything in that game, it is inherently disorienting, and everybody's first instinct is, oh, I want to make things move around the scene and confuse the player, which is, that's your first instinct. That's my first instinct as well when I first made it, and the thing that I immediately discovered was, you're already confused enough. That is just... that pushes beyond a threshold that you don't want to cross. It's a bad idea. But everybody has it as their first idea, and
the recognition, and in general, the recognition that your first idea isn't pure gold is a really hard...
not very many people are equipped for that.
It's a hard bridge to cross, and I think that a lot of people who are entering any professional world will have... that'll be the first hard thing is the idea that, wait, this doesn't work?
Yeah.
My instinct fails me?
So with my engine, when I release the editor tools for it, I will be giving people enough rope to hang themselves and allowing them to do that, so that they can. It'll be locked under a menu item that says these things are bad, or says these things are difficult to implement in a way that will be positive experience for your users, or something. There will be some kind of warning there to let people know that they're treading into territory that has previously been explored by other people and found to be
lacking.
Not so great. But if you want to try it out, to get that first hand experience, to reinvent the wheel so that you can personally understand it and have a direct personal relationship with it, then I think it's still sometimes it's important to be able to do that.
Give the people the tools they need to learn. I mean, it's the same in what you're saying with the tools for production as it is for the gameplay itself, right?
Let's do that vignette if it's still around. Oh yes. We have an event.
Worm season. It's that time when the worm air opens flowers. There's that line break again. Foragers and workers will be able to collect more pollen and nectar. Idle tarsal class. When bored, Daniel likes to move flower markers around the maps in order to confuse the other foragers.
I was really hoping that we'd get the Here There Be Dragonflies vignette, because Drew just mentioned bee dragons down in the chat there. Sometimes you get those kind of synergies. I had someone who was mentioning something about the queen. I don't remember exactly what it was. Whatever it was, I had a vignette that explicitly talked about that. And yeah, I triggered a queen vignette for them just after they said that, and it was the right one, and it was perfect. So alas. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. And the upgraded throne room unlocks the other upgrade options.
I'm just browsing around. But yeah, upgrade throne room prize.
I think you need some more storage before.
I definitely do. I need a lot more storage.
But it's cool as well because you had I guess we can click on the old queen portrait and find out. I don't recall exactly how old the queen was. I'm gonna guess an hour and a half.
No wait, it wasn't there. Oh, it was in
inspect mode.
Inspect mode. Wait.
We have to click on the old queen portrait.
There we go.
Hour and 26 minutes. That's a good guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much time pressure you felt with regards to jelly construction and jelly production, but you may find for this next hive that it's much easier to achieve that. I can do it in under 20 minutes.
Nice.
And the game is, I consciously give you 2 hours because I want to give you time to explore and try different things and stuff. In my mind, making the new queen is not a win condition, it's a continue playing condition, and it's the opportunity to prove that you understand the game well enough to keep playing on your own terms. And so once you get to that point, I want it to be trivial. So you'll find that once you start building stuff, it will be much easier than it felt the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had some difficulty with that when I was initially streaming it because I was confused about... it said that the new queen would be available at a certain point, and I mentally parsed that as the old queen would be was not going to be around. So I mentally parsed that as, oh, that's my time crunch. I need it by then. Oh no. But that's on me. That's not on you.
The tutorial, I think the tutorial mentions it explicitly, but there's so much stuff that you're absorbing on your first playthrough that it is hard to grok it all at once, But there's the icon down in the bottom right. Some people notice that, some people don't notice that. That's probably the easiest way to see how far away the queen's oncoming death is. The other thing is that when that timer expires, you get the midlife crisis event. Mm-hmm. So that's reinforcing that your queen is only halfway through her age. And I guess that's the thing. Once that timer expires, then that's not what it's about.
Right. Parry, thrust. Good. When no one's looking, Daniel.
That is a Princess Bride quote.
Mm-hmm. Daniel likes to duel Nika with rolled up maps. Princess Bride is an absolute delight of a movie.
I love that movie. I hear, and I should probably read up on these things before I spout them myself, but I hear that the choreographer, like the fight choreographer for Princess Bride, which unarguably has the best sword fights of any film, also did the fight choreography for Lord of the Rings, and I think it's really interesting because I find the Lord of the Rings films fights to be much less watchable and much less enjoyable to watch, and I think it's a strongly highlights the role that photography direction, camera movement plays in how readable these things are.
Yeah. And that can be a difficult balance to strike. The best fight scenes are the ones that go into that forward the plot themselves. A good fight scene should be unable to remove it from the movie. That's my take. A good fight scene has plot both in either through narration or through the emotional presentation of the characters. If a fight scene doesn't have
it has to be expressing something, yeah.
Yes. Princess Bride as a movie is fantastic in doing that. And what my favorite fight choreography, actually, this is going to might be a hot take.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
But it's actually the movie. It's not a great movie. It's an okay movie. Is the movie version of The Count of Monte Cristo. Because the characters are not floofing their up in some fancy fencing stance. It's panicked, it's desperate, and both characters have the emotional state. You can get the sense watching it that they are desperately fighting for their lives, and it portrays that part of the narrative, that plot point, exceptionally well. And then after, like that one fight scene, I think is incredibly well done and criminally underrated. After that, I would absolutely say Princess Bride is definitely on par and phenomenal in every way. Another face in the masses. Some days Moro wonders if the Queen even knows their name. Yeah, Bob Anderson. Nice guy. Let's see, we need some more nectar storage. And some more wax in general, but that will come in time.
So nectar is not this kind of aqua blue color or cyane type color. It's clear, and clear is very difficult to depict with this kind of stylized presentation.
Right. And I think that works quite well. It's also it fits the palette well to have the blue color there. The blue color there visually adds a lot to the to the room. Wait, what were we doing? Oh yeah, we were upgrading the throne room. We need more storages. That's what we're doing. Sorry, my brain is now thinking about stage combat. Oh, vignette. Would you like this one?
Mirrored at night, Almina sometimes engages in long debates with their reflection to stave off the loneliness.
Aww.
See, I didn't want them all to feel happy. I didn't want them all to feel wholesome. I wanted to try and give something that feels like a realistic depiction of the kind of diversity of experiences and feelings that we have across our human existences.
Oh. We need more of everything.
So you mentioned, or someone mentioned, briefly at some point, very early on, music was mentioned.
Yes.
We can talk a little bit about music if we want.
Oh, that'd be delightful.
So originally, I was hoping to compose some music of my own for the Game Jam version, and I did not have time. In the version that is available on my itch page, I did a few days extra work and put in a couple of other things, including some music. My goal with that was to not do anything that couldn't have been done within the time. I wanted to make sure that everything felt like it was still part of that kind of 10-day...
The game jam experience.
Yeah. I wanted to accurately, or try and accurately reflect the sorts of things that we were aiming to achieve within that time frame. I didn't get a chance to do that, though, until much later. But after progressing out of the game jam, even before I had decided, because I took a couple of weeks off before deciding whether or not I was going to work on it and develop it into a full game. During that window, a friend of mine, Peter Silk, who is a composer, had contacted me and said, I would really love to compose music for this game. And I talked with him for a bit, and he seemed to understand what the game was about, and he was very enthusiastic. So I said, yeah, all right, let's do it. And the way that I wasn't really originally intending to bring anybody else on in my mind and in my heart, I suppose. This was a very personal project. It was an expression of the relationship that I had with my partner at the time, which has made it challenging to work on in the wake of her departure. But bringing somebody else on was like a very big deal.
Shift, a big mental shift, if nothing else.
Yeah, and it was challenging to do that, but when I work with other people, I want to make sure that I'm giving them room to express themselves, a room to do work that they find interesting and fulfilling, and room to feel like they have creatively brought something to the thing. If not, then there is no reason for me to have them as collaborators. I can... One thing that I am kind of very happy about is that I have built a broad skill set, and I kind of don't really need to be dependent on anybody for anything. So whenever I do work with somebody, it's because I want to bring whatever they can contribute to what's going on. So even though I have my own ideas for what the music could be or would be, I told Peter to do whatever he wanted to do. Told him that he had latitude to explore as much as he wanted. I gave him some feedback and a little bit of direction early on as we kind of started to nail things down, but he definitely took it in directions that I wasn't expecting, and I think the game is much stronger for it. So for example, my original intention was that the soundtrack would be primarily composed of background pieces, which I can't hear the stream, so I don't know what we're listening to right now. But chances are we're probably listening to a background music piece at the moment. It's like not very obtrusive.
We were literally until the moment that you said that.
Oh, okay. Well, so my thought was nothing but background pieces, and then a short sort of, I don't know, 10-second sting for well, I guess at 10 seconds it's not a sting anymore, but a short piece for an event that would be either like positive, negative, or funny, or whatever is like generic moods that I could give to the events. And Peter really pushed at giving all of the events their own character and doing like bespoke pieces for specific events. So I'm trying to think of one. I don't know if you've seen the Beatles event.
Oh, one tick here. We actually have a Wave Royal event vignette. Would you like to take this one?
Uncertain successor. Queen Jen II is never sure whether she does as good a job as past queens, and sometimes has to work at finding confidence. Yeah, so there's, I don't know if you got the Beatles event, but that's probably the best one to focus on. Again, this whole idea of people joining a particular role for the wrong reasons. A lot of bees can become foragers so that they can attend an open-air concert that a rock band called the Beatles are holding at the base of a nearby tree. And they're Beatles, right? And I thought that was funny. In my mind, I wrote it out. This was long before there was anything else. When I was just brainstorming stuff, I was like, the idea of bees becoming foragers because they just want to go and hang out at a rock concert, that's funny. Let's make it the Beatles because that's, thematically appropriate and also funny. And then Miriam drew drew these Beatles with Beatles haircuts. I don't know how easy it is to identify who is who, but in my mind, I can see John, Paul, Ringo, and uh-oh,
And the other one.
and the other one. um, and that's fun, and that's quite nice. Jesus, these vignettes seem to be triggering much more frequently than they
They're
normally
real
should.
to me. Queen Jen II likes to spend some of her personal time writing the confronting memoirs of characters from the fantasy land of Waxland.
Drew has informed us it's George. It is George. I'm sorry, George Harrison.
I mean,
you are memorable in your own way.
yeah, no, would you like to know who my favorite band is?
Sure.
My favorite band is the Boston Philharmonic. So, slightly different musical taste.
Valid. That's valid. I wouldn't say that the Beatles are my favorite band. I just were a really good fit for an event for this game.
Fantastic fit for the pun, no question.
Yeah. So Miriam did the art, and again, I mentioned before there are a lot of things in here that were just kind of personal indulgences, and that was one of them. Was Miriam wanted to draw some Beatles that looked like the Beatles. And so we did that, and then Peter's working on the soundtrack, and he's like, well, he lives in the UK, and obviously the Beatles are a cultural icon from the UK, and he's like, I would like to do something that sounds like a Beatles track here. And
there we go. I'll let you take this
stink
one.
bugs. Those crazy kids. Aiz brought in a drunk stink bug last week who turned out to be 3 grubs in a trench coat. This is like you have no control over the order that you'll see vignettes in, so this is kind of like the subversion of the thing that's already been established. Sometimes you get it first, but yeah. Got an apple on our head here.
A very small apple.
Yeah. Bees don't have big mouths. They can't eat big apples.
That makes sense. That checks out. The logic is infallible.
The dwarf apples. Yeah. So yeah, Peter was like, I would like to do this. This would be fun to do. And I went, yeah, sure. It was a kind of a personal indulgence again. And he did this track that some people, when streaming, will say, oh no, is this a real piece of Beatles music? Am I going to get a copyright strike?
Yep, yeah.
Which I guess is flattering, right? In terms of having an authentic
The feel
thing. But the track is called Being Together, and Peter went out and bought some kazoos for it. And just before he was about to record the kazoo music, I said, you know what, I feel like the kazoo performance would be better if we wrote some lyrics for this. How do you feel about that? And he went, yeah, okay, we can do that. So I was hoping to have a go at it, but I had a migraine, and so Peter did it, and he did a much better job than I could have done. So I'm glad that that I wasn't able to. And another indulgence, we paid a vocal artist to record those vocals, and there is a human lyric version hiding in the downloadable version of the soundtrack, and also hiding in the Bepedia as an Easter egg in the game. And in Peter's mind, see, the Beatles actually did some localized versions of their songs, like there are German versions of Beatles songs. And so in his mind, he's like, well, the Beatles did like this B version, and then they also did a human version as their like localized thing, and so it's kind of got this in fiction justification as well.
Nice.
And I love the cycle of or the chain of indulgences that resulted in this homage to something that is, as far as I'm aware, the Beatles are quite important to Peter. And I think, to the world, really. They had a very big impact on not just music culture, but also just like people culture because
Yeah.
of the influence that music has, like the role that music has changed, the role that music had in people's lives changed as part of that.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful to have this. There's no way that it could ever be justifiable in terms of you sit down at the beginning of a project and you say, okay, well, what's our budget? How are we going to work all of this? There's no way that you could go, okay, well, yeah, we're going to do this Beatles tribute song that kind of isn't even in the game, really.
Yeah. You don't plan that during the game jam.
But I was happy to do it, and it's another way that I was willing to and happy to embrace the idea of giving the people that I collaborated with the latitude to do things that excited them.
Yeah. Such vistas. Cillian says the view from this exit is the best in the Hive. So long as you ignore the gnats.
Gnats can be substituted with a couple of other things there as well, I think.
Very good. It adds a lot of versatility to
a bit of variety, yeah. And that was the thing. I was like, well, you know, at the time that the game shipped, I think I only had like 70 vignettes, I think. Maybe less. In the initial version of the game. And so I was like, well, how can I get some extra mileage out of those? You know, how can I make them more interesting? If you're playing multiple hives, if you're playing for a long time, how can I get some extra mileage out of that? I'll put some substitution in, and then you know, if someone is dabbling in you know, making miniature trains or dabbling in arson, those are two very different thoughts and two very different responses that they're going to elicit. So yeah, get some extra mileage out of that, which really was my mantra throughout the entirety of development, was do as much as possible with as little as possible.
So I have a question. Does this UI panel... Oh, Guild of Carpenter Bees? Oh, the same one as before. That still sounds nice. So does this panel up here extend all the way down?
It's not meant to. Are you finding somewhere that you... Yeah, okay. That's the debug HUD that you can't see.
Oh, that's interesting.
You won't. Just be careful, because all of the options have shortcuts, and you can reset all of your research or whatever by pressing a button inadvertently.
I found a secret.
Yeah, I'll I thought I had dealt with that, but I will deal with it again.
I was thinking that this UI panel was extending down beyond its necessity, or simply just being automatically resized, but the clickable area was not being resized. I don't know.
No, there's a few other elements that are hidden that are in there. So if you're playing a test build, there's a debug notice that hangs on the left side. The debug HUD can pop out from the left side when you press tilde if debug mode is enabled. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that.
Can't take the FOMO. Melissa spends too much time on social media and worries that they're not living its life to the fullest.
Again, there's lots of people who... I don't think everybody relates with every single vignette, but I think that there's something that most people will find to be able to relate to across all of them.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Another workshop or three.
As Drew says, it's a B game, there should be bugs.
Yeah, no, that checks out.
Oh, and another Easter egg, the upgraded nursery has some control panels there. There is a screenshot of... Oh, sorry, not upgraded nursery, upgraded map room. There are screenshots of another one of my B games on the control panels there, called Honeycomb Crunch.
Yeah, there it is. Neat. I love Easter eggs. Just, in general, the concept of you know, the developers doing something that they didn't need to because they wanted to. Especially when it's coming out of a more corporatized game system, are just a delight to see.
I think it is a sign of something healthy.
Absolutely. It's the sign that the developer both wants to be working on the game they're making, and
that they have some space to express themselves, right?
Yeah. And it's...
If you don't have that, I feel like you're oppressed. Like that is the definition of being oppressed, I think. Or a definition of being oppressed is not having the space to express yourself.
I'm definitely inclined to agree on that front.
Yeah. But so Peter did a whole lot of music tracks for the events and stuff, and a bunch of these background tracks. I wanted to have a gap between the background music tracks to give the ambient audio a chance to sit in the foreground for a little bit. So when you zoom in, you get the opportunity to hear your bees a bit more. When you zoom right out, there are crickets and birds that you can hear as you pan around the play space.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's why there's gaps there. There's an option in the audio settings to disable the gap between music, between background music cues, if that's something that you don't appreciate. But I kind of like it.
Would you like this one?
Locked away for good. Ao once wrote a list of all of their fears and hid it inside a block of wax. Ao knows it's a little bit silly, but it makes them feel better.
Mm-hmm. That will be very important for bee archaeologists in the future to find.
I don't know if I want to talk too much about things that I wanted to do or had planned to do but didn't get to do. I had two more post-release updates, like major content updates planned that I would have liked to have done, and one of them would have seen chunks of old hives be discoverable in the play space.
Oh no! Gone as quickly as they came. In a daring raid, ninja fruit flies have infiltrated the hive, sneaking into the throne room itself and making off with a statuette of the queen's favorite dandelion. They grabbed as much of each feature as they could carry, which wasn't very much. Oh gosh.
I love these guys. So we can see how much they took down the bottom left.
Oh, and we got fruit fly facts. Fruit fly facts. That's just fun to say. Fruit fly
Say
facts.
that 10 times.
Fruit fly facts, 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 fruit fly facts.
I think I heard a fruit fry fact in there at one point.
Maybe one. The trick to a lot of the tongue twisters is getting a good glottal stop in. Fruit flies are as ravenous as they are insatiable. They are stealthy and persistent, which means that once they've found something they like, no matter how many times you shoo them away, oh, they'll be there again next time you turn around.
Did we have the Beatles topic there?
Oh, wait, no, Bpedia. That's not the button for Bpedia, that's the button to go over here. World?
It's under World, yeah.
Beatles.
We don't have them. Yeah, I mean, we do. Okay. If you... that's possibly my favorite joke in the game. This description here.
Go ahead with it.
Beatles are typically musically inclined. Some of the greatest composers of all times were Beatles. Johann Sebastian Bach Beatle, Antonio Vivaldi, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, to name a few. Erwin van Beethoven was often mistaken for a Beatle, was in fact a member of the order Dermaptera. So earwigs are not Beatles, even though I guess you could look at one and go, oh, that's a Beatle type thing. And I like that Erwig and Ludwig are very close to each other. And I really, really enjoy that Mozart's insect name is just Mozart.
Yep.
But if you flick off and onto this topic a couple of times...
Heck. I keep on hitting escape to open up. Quick menu. And I keep on failing at it. Right now? On to Beatles.
So if we go back to Beatles again.
Yes.
We will find one of the Beatle facts, if we go off and on again, will be a picture of the Beatles event. There it is. You can click that little button there to hear the song that I was talking about.
Okay.
What kind of use is a bee who falls to pieces like me when I see
I assume we're hearing it.
you in the flower? Work just to get through the day. I see you looking my way, and my wings lose their power. I can't survive. Throw me out of the fire. If we can't be being together, feels like I'm gathering dust. You always seem so nonplussed, like you can't even hear me. Then I hear you buzz my name. You tell me you feel the same, and you want to be near me. Can it be true? I would never feel good if we could be being together.
It's good.
That's adorable, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we got it in.
Oh, it'll continue if we leave? Okay. Excellent. What a wonderful little addition.
Yep. It's great, and it's kind of that early Beatles feel. Peter has a very specific Beatles era that he was trying to evoke, which I am less well versed in in identifying, but I think it's like 64, 65.
Okay.
63, 64 Beatlemania era is what he says, and other people who are much greater Beatles aficionados than I am have highlighted that themselves without me telling them. So I think he did. I think he did the job he set out to do, which is very nice.
I think it works quite well. We are all in this together. Antonio sometimes feels like they're working a little bit harder than the other workers, but they know that every bee is doing their best.
So yeah, I think the thing that someone had said, I mentioned the Queen vignette, they'd seen the animation of the Queen looking over her shoulder, and there was a past Queen. Like, if you stay in the same hive, then the old Queen will bumble around the throne room. And so the Queen was doing the looking over the shoulder animation, and he was talking about how the new Queen felt like she was under the shadow of the past Queen. And then I triggered a vignette, and the vignette came up and said that she wasn't sure that she was doing as good a job as previous Queens. And it was just this wonderful synergistic moment.
We need more exits, don't we? Do we? I think we might.
If you click on the throne room and go to the activity screen, it will show you whether or not you have idle workers or idle foragers. If you click on, there's buttons down the side, you can choose which role you're looking at. So idle foragers definitely means too few exits.
Well, good to know. Oh, wait, resource.
Yeah, resources come from exits, so I figured that they should go in the resources cell.
Oh no, it makes perfect sense. Exits are one of those things that doesn't really seem perfect in every category. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, working out where to put them was kind of tricky.
But I think that resource cells definitely make sense.
It makes sense after you see it. It's probably not where you look when you're looking for it.
That's a good way of phrasing it, yeah.
The tutorial tells you to go and look in the resources submenu, but most people are still busy absorbing other things and don't quite take that in.
And for me, when I see exit, my mind doesn't parse that as
back or leave.
yeah. My mind parses that as the contextual exit instead of hive exit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I did try and think of. There wasn't really anything else that I could come up with.
Oh no, it's fair. We have a question about the research going into this. Were you already a bee expert going in?
I was already a bee enthusiast, and as I said before, this game is definitely more about humans than bees. So the gameplay definitely is not indicative of anything to do with bees, really. It just has bee shapes and bee words. Oh, we've seen that one, but it's a good one. When the Beepedia came in as part of the informational update, Beepedia was another one of those things that I had planned from the beginning but had to let go of in time for release, but was able to bring it in as part of a post-release update. I did want to go out and find some bee facts to go in at the bottom of every page, which you've seen a couple of, I think. Excuse me. I wanted to go and do proper research for those, and I wanted to make sure that I could have sources for most of those that I could cite. That button that we clicked on to listen to the Being Together track, if it's like a proper research fact, then it will take you in a browser to relevant research paper that you can read and learn more. So I wanted to have something that was a little bit educational and grounded in the actuality of bees than the game itself is, as a way of kind of, making up for all of these misrepresentations that we have here. So, for example, real bees do not get assigned roles like this. Bees typically, from what I understand, there are roles like this, but bees go through them based on their age rather than being assigned them at birth. And I find that really interesting, but not really a good fit for what I was making here.
I think the bee's ability to make maps, is fascinating itself. I'm misdoing it. Tragic.
As in real bees?
Yes. The way they
so they
dance, they're out a map to their friends.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. We've kind of mostly understand how that works and what the language of the dance is, and it's fascinating. And it's also democratic, right? Like everybody, if a bee's got a thing that they want to do, or they want to share with other bees, then they'll do their little dance thing. And other bees that appreciate or think that idea is good, they'll do that dance. And there'll be other competing dances, and eventually something will become more popular, and that will be the thing that everybody knows about, and everybody will move on. And it's this interesting kind of democratic thing where where bees are just kind of sharing the ideas and the things that they've discovered. It would be like if our elections were just driven by policies.
Imagine that.
We can learn a lot from bees.
Bees are people too.
But bees also have electroperception, which allows them to perceive and potentially generate electromagnetic fields. And there's some supposition that might play a role in communication as well. So there might be some more complex levels at which bee communication occurs than we currently have solidly discovered.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a link to that in the Beepedia as well, if you can, for anybody who wants to know more about that.
I think that there's a lot of animals that we assume are unintelligent because they don't exhibit what we define as intelligence.
Yes, we are very good, and I think this is a cultural thing. I don't think this is a human thing, but we are very good at rationalizing that things that are different are not. Yeah, we're very good at othering things that are different. We're good at saying, this type of animal doesn't have this type of brain. It doesn't have this piece of brain that we experience pain through, therefore this animal cannot experience pain.
Yeah,
and we're happy to rationalize boiling lobsters alive while they're clearly in extreme discomfort. For a long time we thought that birds weren't capable of a particular type of reasoning because they don't have the brain piece that we do it with. But it turns out that they just do that with a different piece of their brain, which in fact allows them to be lighter and more efficient and better at flying. And it's like, whoops, all of these preconceptions we had about what is and isn't real, what can and can't exist, are just made up projections of our own biases.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, a Dr. Bees reference.
You never have too many. Mark is proud to be helping populate the world with yet more bees.
So Dr. Bees is like this series of shorts on YouTube about a mild-mannered wasp-themed superhero who by night becomes Dr. Bees! It's silly, and he often solves problems with the addition of yet more bees!
Interesting. I haven't heard of this, but it's not terribly surprising given, regionality. You're in Australia.
I think it's a think it's a US creator who makes it. But there's so much stuff being made on the internet that it's not really possible to be across all of it.
I mean, I live in a small cave, so I'm kind of,
That tracks. That tracks.
Mhm.
We can see a small part of it behind the game here.
Let's see here. I'm just going to hammer the jelly storage button. Actually, we have a jelly storage upgrade we can probably do. Probably, maybe.
Did you discover resource reserves, by the way?
The what now?
So when you upgrade a storage cell, it unlocks a new management screen or new management ability. The screen's always there. That lets you. So if you go to the level screen, you can see. Just click on any storage cell. And levels is that one. It'll show you what the current storage levels of each of your resources are. You can see all of those at once, or one at a time, or whatever you prefer. And there's some sliders down the bottom there that are locked until you upgrade the resource. Until you upgrade a resource storage cell. Once you do, you can set a reserve, which is an amount of resources that will not be consumed by production. And so, particularly at this part of the Hive, this phase of the Hive, where we're trying to ramp up construction and whatever, and we're also got production of all the resources going on. Jelly requires honey and pollen and nectar, and so consumes incredible amounts of resources. Having these reserves means that you can still continue to do research, can still continue to do construction without production gobbling up all of that stuff. So under other circumstances, before you get those upgrades, you can pause the production individually you can pause production for each resource at the production facilities, but the reserves let you kind of manage all of this in a more streamlined way.
Mm-hmm. So I got the upgraded pollen storage. How do I get the upgraded nectar? Is that something I have to research as well?
You got to research it, yeah.
Okay. I will.
That's a topmost one, I think.
Ah, excellent. 70, done. And we'll do that one when we can.
So yeah, I mentioned we had a previous discussion where we were talking about the effort involved with making things, and I had mentioned that my mantra throughout this game's development was do as much with as little as possible, which makes it sound like I cut corners and avoided doing things, which to an extent I probably did, but it was very much about consciously managing how practical everything that I made would be. So the assumption might be that I didn't make a bunch of my assets, or I didn't used a lot of existing or pre-existing stuff. Whereas the reality is that the only things in this game that were not made for this game are the fonts, the engine, obviously, because that existed before this game did. I did contribute some upstream fixes, so maybe there's a technicality I can get off with there.
Oh no, yeah, you get credit for those.
And one of the B samples, one of the B sound samples, is a Creative Commons Zero licensed thing that I found on Freesound, which is listed in the credits. I still like to credit CC0 stuff, even though you don't have to. But other than that, everything was made from scratch for this game.
Very good. Yeah, attributions are always good, and like even if you don't have to, it's always worthwhile to do so.
I think so. Like in my mind, a lot of I don't want to do anything that other people can't do. Like I feel if you have the general attitude that you want to leave the world as in a better place than you entered it, then I think you have to make sure that other people can do the things that you do. And so I share a lot of the stuff that I do, I release for free or as free software with sources available so that other people can learn from them. I do talks and give presentations on things that I've done so other people can learn from my experiences. I write articles about things that I've done so that other people can learn from my experiences. I think it's really important to open doors behind you and lower ladders behind you, because doing the opposite is not being a responsible cultural contributor.
Agree.
And there was a fundamental point that I was leading toward, but this event is fun.
You want to go ahead and read it?
Weird Science, a Vinehopper scientist expelled from the venerable Academy of Sweet Sciences, has come to the Hive asking for honey to perform unsanctioned experiments.
Oh, absolutely. Let's go for weird science here.
Okay.
What could possibly
What could possibly
go
go wrong?
This means something. Debbie keeps a journal of all the dreams they've ever had. They're not sure what it is, but they know they'll find a pattern eventually.
That's a obscure Close Encounters of the Third Kind quote.
Oh.
And the dude is making the mashed potato sculpture. It's like, this is important. This means something. Because he's been having a dream about the what's that land formation called? Is it like the Devil's Tower or something? I don't know.
Not sure off the top of my head.
That's where the alien spacecraft lands at the end of the film.
Oh, I see. We have Francis. Hello, Francis. How do you do?
Let's give Francis a custom hat.
Okay. Oh, we can actually, we can change this. We'll give them as what they are. Oh, the nurse hat.
So the nurse
sounds...
hat, the nurse hat was the hat that we had in the jam version of the game, and it was the thing again. You do the thing that's your first initial thought, and then you later go, maybe that's not a good idea. We didn't really like the idea of because the nursery is all about raising new bees, and we didn't really feel like the medicalization of birth was something that we wanted to participate in the cultural normalization of. So nurse hat became something that we retired as quickly as possible, and we moved more towards a teachery type presentation than a medical presentation.
That makes sense.
That's the reset button at the bottom.
Oh, heck. The nurse educators are very powerful.
Yeah. I like our bee educators. We get these cool glasses.
Excellent.
Hexagonal, of course.
Naturally. Yeah, I love how much you can just sit back and vibe with the game. Like,
yeah. And the movement of the bees came out really well as well. It wasn't intentional. Something that I did to simplify, and this is a good example of the whole do as much with as little as possible. I wanted to make sure that I could avoid common pitfalls for this sort of game. So any management sim or supply chain sim, which you typically get with base building type games, where you have individual agents within the simulation carrying resources around, as bees do in this. Often you can run into pathfinding bugs or pathfinding bugs happen, right? It is a sad reality, but it's very complex stuff, and it's easy to have edge cases that you haven't accounted for.
It's just a reality because the edge cases happen so often that they appear to be common cases.
Right.
That's the way I would phrase it.
And so, because of the nature of these types of games, supply chain simulations in particular, the moment that you have a pathing problem, you potentially end up with a resource deadlock where, there's an agent that is carrying resources to a site that they need to get to, and that site cannot request more resources because there are currently in transit resources, but they're never going to arrive, and that means that the thing is stalled.
Right.
And I was like, well, I would like to avoid that. So there's no pathfinding. Bees do not do any pathfinding.
Just all direct travel?
Yep, direct travel from one cell to another. And in another effort to simplify the simulation, particularly for large hives, I decided that every cell is equidistant from every other cell so far as the simulation is concerned.
Okay.
So regardless of how far away two cells are, a bee will always take the same amount of time to travel between it and any other
I actually
cell.
had noticed that in watching how they move, and I think that's a great choice because it adds a lot of diversity into movement speeds. Like some
it gives
bees
a
are
really
zipping
organic
around.
sense.
Yeah,
to
it really does.
the population's movement, which was unintentional, but a wonderful
Like-
and happy accident.
I was thinking that was an intentional choice that you went along with to make it, knowing that is just happened to come out that way organically is really fascinating.
I would say that seeing it, discovering that did give that kind of organic feel definitely played a big role in solidifying that was the direction that I wanted to go in.
And solidifying that was the right choice.
Yeah, it's a good fit. I call it bumbling, which is difficult because I call other things bumbling as well. But the sort of swaying, haphazard movement that the bees have as well was just a temporary thing that I put in, and it's less pronounced when they're moving fast, but more pronounced when they're moving slow, which kind of also adds to this organic sense of movement as well. And they're all playing the one animation. There's only one of these kind of like swaying, moving around animations. It's just random noise on the XYZ axis for movement and for rotation.
Okay.
And I tweaked it so that it would loop without any noticeable things. And then when a bee spawns, it just starts that animation at a random position.
That makes
But
sense.
another thing that kind of looks good, looks better than I expected. And at that point I was like, okay, well, with my do as much with as little as possible, if that looks good enough, then I'm happy with that. And generally I get positive comments on the bee animation and bee movement.
Yeah, I think that the variable speed, because there's so many variations of it, just works so well for just the lively nature of what everything that's going on. Like,
if you look at a real beehive, it has these kinds of qualities to it, which is more a factor of if a bee needs to go somewhere far away, they will go there more quickly. If they, if it's somewhere nearby, then they can take their time. And you end up with this kind of flow, and it was very gratifying to see once I had the first sort of large population tests.
so how are you doing time-wise? Usually I stream about 2 hours, give or take, which is where we are now.
I have another stream to be on in an hour and a half.
Okay.
But I'm otherwise not booked at all. I'm happy to go for as long or as short a period of time as you like.
I think I'm going to go up to that 600. I pretty much have everything else in place that I need for it.
All right.
And I think that'll be a nice, natural ending point, if that's okay with you.
That's totally fine. I mentioned earlier that repeat building wasn't something that was on my list of things that I wanted. It wasn't part of my vision for the game.
Yeah.
But early testers told me that they wanted it, and they were right. And I mentioned as well that there are a few temporary things that found their way into the game that ended up staying. The UI sounds as well, another example of that. All of the UI sounds in the game are me making silly mouth sounds. And I just wanted something temporary that I could put in there so that I would have the oral space defined as we brought music into the game. And then people like them, so they stayed. I love nothing more than tuning into someone's stream and find that they're unconsciously, while playing, going when they can't build something. Because their mouth sounds, they're easy to imitate, and people do, and it's quite nice. But
Yarakina thinks that honey is the most important resource in the hive, in a sense it's the sweetest, of course.
And I had somewhere that I was going with this. Oh yes, obstacles. So I had explored this kind of thing in another game just before starting Hive Time, so it was already on my mind. But obviously very early on, only parts of the game were in place. And the play space was just this empty green field that you could build any way you wanted. There were no obstacles, no construction obstacles to help convey a sense of scale or to provide buffers that you can't build past. And I found, surprisingly, this was completely unexpected to me, was that almost every playtester that played the game before obstacles were in built a circular or hexagonal shaped hive, moving radially outward from the center in a clockwise fashion. And it is like everybody did this. And I found that really, really interesting. I had planned to put the obstacles in. The moment that I put them in, people were making much different shaped hives, and actually making decisions about where to build and how to build. So what it does is it adds, let's think of the play space as a grid, as it is.
Yeah.
And let's imagine that every space, every tile, every cell on the play space has a number that represents its desirability to you as a player. If there are no obstacles, then every cell has the same value, right? There's no difference between building eastward and building westward. They
Right.
both offer the same outcomes. The moment that we put obstacles in,
Yeah.
that completely changes the texture of the possibility space. It means that sometimes you might be like, well, I only need to build small things here, so I can build into this constrained space and just build like individual storage and a few exits here, and it doesn't matter. Or you could be like, well, I want to build a whole bunch of upgraded storage here, so I need a lot of space. I'm going to build out in this direction where there's fewer obstacles. Or maybe I have to build past these awkward obstacles that are in the way to get to the good space. And that suddenly just made the process of construction much more technical and much more interesting for players.
I agree, and I could actually see a lot of available design space for adding a appearance slider or making some extremely difficult to create hives constraints, just to for people to have that as a primary mechanic as opposed to simply a passive I'll build around the branch sort of thing.
One of the things that would have made it into the last post-release update that I had planned was scenario hives, and some of those would have been built around particular obstacle styles and things.
Oh, they'll laugh at anything. Vinny loves practicing their comedy routine on the grubs. Old or new, the little ones thinks that every joke is hilarious.
I just love that kids laugh at everything. It's so good. I don't care if they've heard it before.
As long as they're having a good time, they'll
Right.
laugh, and that counts.
Yep.
Let's see here.
But there is a find your own fun option for disabling obstacles as well. If you're a player who feels like you don't want to have obstacles crimping your style, that's an option.
That made me think of something that I was just curious about. Has anybody speedrun this game? I have to assume there has been someone.
I don't know. I've seen some people talk about it. Obviously, I have done things as fast as possible as part of development and testing and stuff. But I know some players have sort of taken up the what's the fastest I can get the amount of jelly that I need thing as just like a general goal. But I don't know of anybody who's like specifically been chasing speedrun stuff.
Here's a good flick. Some days, Queen Jen II just wants to take an evening off and watch Bee Wars. The Buzz Awakens.
Good old film puns. It's funny. Bee Wars felt like a very easy one to go for, right?
Yeah.
And there's the Buzz Awakens. There's The Empire Stings Back. And there's a third one, which I have it here in front of me, so I don't need to guess. A New Hive.
Oh, that checks out.
Yeah, but it also turned out that B-Trek is a good one, because B-Trek 2, the Wax of Khan, is a great film.
Nice.
And B-Trek 6, The Unpollinated Country, is another favorite of mine.
So I think we have everything we need to just sit back and watch
Let it do its thing.
Yeah, let it unfold.
Another thing that I had hoped to get in but didn't really have the opportunity to was I called them triple letter scores. So if we think about Scrabble has these similar kinds of possibility space concerns, and the texture of that possibility space is amplified by having multiplier bonuses on particular tiles. And so the idea of if you build a nursery here, that nursery will be better, or you build a honey refinery here, that honey refinery will be better, and give you these things as distant objectives, or distant things that you can see that you can create your own objectives out of. I would like to build over here, and I would like to get to that thing. But alas, you know, my qualifier for originally releasing the game, which I released on the 12th of December in 2019, so a little while ago now. But my original qualifier was, would I consider this game finished if I never got to work on it again? And so missing out on things, and maybe this is a really important thing for people to consider if they're not particularly experienced with game development. But I often say that game development is an exercise in humility. You never get to do everything you want to do.
Nope.
And you have to find ways to be comfortable with what it is that you've made.
And somewhat often you shouldn't do everything that you could possibly do anyways. Oh, we finally are paying this off. Weirder Science. The Vinehopper scientist returns looking disheveled, waving a number of numbers and graphs and squiggles around. They say they'll need access to honey, a honey refinery, and some time to finally prove it once and for all. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm all in on that. I'm all in on that.
If you say no at that point, you get a guaranteed negative outcome.
But
it doesn't come back until later. So the idea is that you've alienated him, and he goes off and does his research in secret, and then blows up half of your hive by accident.
Aw, bad dreams wake Ahmed most nights, but afterward they sleep well.
And by half, that's an exaggeration. They just blow up all of your honey for refineries and surrounding cells.
Oh no.
There's a running theme of, if you say you will do something and then don't do it, there are usually negative consequences.
I mean, real life too.
Yeah.
Just saying. But but what you're saying there, like, there's also that saying that if take a look at your project, cut 10% off of it somehow, and the final result will probably end up better than if you hadn't. Like,
it's always tough, right? Like,
yeah, it's extremely difficult.
I think this game is subjectively better for having the portraits in there, and they were something that I trimmed off, or had planned to trim off. And the Bpedia as well. Like, the game is enriched from having the Bpedia in there.
Absolutely.
Which wasn't in there at the initial release. So it's in general, yes. And I think this could have been a much bigger game. This could have been a game where you like manage a dozen hives concurrently at the same time, and
you could have added a combat system.
Well, originally I had planned an event called Wasp Attack, and originally I had planned to allow wasps to enter via the exits, and the idea was that you were able to, like, the management thing that the exits would expose would be closing and opening them. Closing them doesn't let your foragers out, but opening them allows things to get in, and the idea was going to be that all the defenders would like mob the attacking wasps in the way that certain real bees do to overheat the attackers. But in the end, I was like, well, you know what? The game is good without that. It doesn't need it, and in general, it's kind of nice that there's no depictions of violence in the game, because
keeps it wholesome.
There's more than enough games out there that are already doing that.
Yeah. Sometimes May makes a little extra wax to sell to Ladybug's Cosmetics Cartel in exchange for some samples of their beeswax lip balm.
So yeah, it could have been a huge game. Like, the possibility space around any concept is effectively infinite, right? Like, it's beyond anybody's ability to like comprehend in one go or explore at once. So yeah, we pick out the bits that we think are most interesting, and that's our job as designers, is to curate the possibility space surrounding a concept.
And do the best we can with what you have.
Yeah.
So my current plan is that next week I'm going to go over your Game Jam survival guide.
Oh yeah, cool.
Do that as
that was part of that, trying to push for a culture of seeing game jams as an opportunity to grow and exercise project management skills.
Alyssa keeps a little bag of pollen and nectar hidden by this exit, just in case. They know they'll never need it, but it gives them comfort anyways.
This idea, there's a lot of people who and obviously not to be dismissive of people who do actually need to run away and get out of situations that are unhealthy for them. But there are a lot of people who toy with the idea of running away, particularly when they're kids, who don't really mean it, but thinking about that and exploring that concept gives them some degree of comfort.
And even in the case of like natural disasters, having a plan, even if you, even if you know you're never going to touch like the cans in your basement, like the fact that they're
Keep
there.
a fire extinguisher in your kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wear a seatbelt when you drive.
Yep. One thing I was taught with motorcycles: gear for the crash you might be in, not for the ride that you're going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
And I think that's an important lesson in general, particularly in these times. Not to get too deep into things that are topical, but like we have an opportunity here to learn from the current situation that we're in, and not just survive this pandemic, but build cultures that make us better equipped to handle future ones with less disruption.
Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Kahaya and Henry had an argument a while back. Henry hasn't accepted Kahaya's apology. It hurts, but Kahaya knows that it's important to respect that.
I read that vignette when I had a falling out with a friend, and there is a corresponding one where it says that two friends made up. And I wasn't really sure how it was, like my actual real life friendship, I wasn't sure how that was going to eventuate. But I wrote a pair of vignettes that expressed what I felt were the healthiest responses to either outcome. Because if someone doesn't want you in their life, then you got to respect that. You can't force yourself on someone.
Absolutely.
As sad as it is, like that's the nature of difficult situations, is that they are difficult.
Yep.
I didn't think you upgraded your nectar storage there.
Oh, good
Oh,
science! After some time, the Vinehapper scientist announces that the final experiment is ready. With a lot more spittle than should be necessary, today we witness the future! Screams the Vinehapper as the honey refinery kicks into motion, producing honey at an incredible rate. Nice.
So we'll see the effect icon down in the bottom right, telling us we've got 2.5 times honey production for 2 minutes.
Which is actually right on time.
Kind of handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personal hurdles. Steph thinks Kira is pretty cool and would like them to be friends, but they feel intimidated by the confronting nature.
It's a case where the they-them pronouns gets a little bit ambiguous. Which I tried to avoid from a writing perspective, just like write things where that ambiguity doesn't exist.
I mean, any
There's
set
a
of pronouns can
couple
be...
word creeps in.
Yeah, any set of pronouns, has a chance for ambiguity. That's why they're pronouns.
I think it's amplified with they them, because that can be referring to, if you've got two characters or two things or two subjects within the text, it could be either referring to one of those that you're using gender neutral pronouns for, or it could be referring to both of those collectively.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It's not really that big a deal. I think it's very clear what that vignette was talking about. The Vinehopper Scientist event has a 50% chance of a negative outcome.
And what is the negative outcome of that?
So the negative outcome of the good branch is that just one honey refinery explodes.
Oh, okay. That's
the
not
negative outcome
though.
of the other branch is that every honey refinery explodes.
That is catastrophic.
And they take out the like adjacent cells as well.
Oh no.
So in this case where you've got your upgraded nursery, you would have lost that.
Maybe it was better when it came out. Caden saw B-Wars.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
Caden saw B-Wars, The Empire Stings back last week, and doesn't understand what all the buzz is about.
Tory Flop mentioned that the Vinehopper Scientist blew up some of their hive.
Oh no. He blows up so much.
How many honey refineries do you have? Because that's the big thing. If you've only got one, then it doesn't make as much a difference as if you've got them spread throughout the entirety of your hive.
So many of them.
Yeah, if you take the bad branch, then it will blow up all of your honey refineries and the surrounding cells. Yeah.
Oh,
Good
dear.
times, good times. You can recover from it.
Right,
I mean,
we
that's
have-
the point. The point is to give you things to recover from. We're here. It's time.
We have me drop a save.
A cool save.
And head back to my own cave right here.
Very nice. Well, I hope that that has been fun and interesting.
It has. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to make a schedule with joining me here.
No, it's been my pleasure.
Well, it has been indeed been a pleasure, and well, I'm sure we'll be communicating at some point in the future. And I hope you have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks to everybody who was watching, and thanks to you for giving some attention to my little bee game.
It well deserves it, and I'm glad for the opportunity. Thank you
Cheers.
everybody who enjoyed the stream, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Cheers.